We are live.
Okay, at what time is it? 5:01. I am calling to order the Finance Committee for today, March 10th. And if we could get a roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Cassett.
Here.
Councillor Lindell. Councillor Faulkner. Councillor Lee Garcia. Chair Romero-Worth.
I am here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, I think we have some changes to tonight's agenda. Do you want to go over that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is that we would like to remove the presentation for finance staff recognition. We'd like to reschedule that to another meeting because the staff member that we would like to recognize wasn't available tonight. And then the other change that we would like to request is in relation to the consent agenda.
Let's wait on that one. Let's get those items pulled first. And that's the only change, correct?
Yes, just
Okay,
removing.
So we're removing the staff recognition. And if there are no other changes from the committee, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
As amended, if you
As
wouldn't.
amended.
Okay, so who wants to arm wrestle for the motion? Councillor Faulkner or Councillor Lee Garcia? All right, Councillor Lee Garcia has the motion. Councillor Signe Lindell has the second. And we don't have anybody on Zoom, so all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Now on to consent. I believe we have two items pulled from consent. I'm going to go to you, Director Oster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have item K and item O, and staff requests that they be heard in reverse order. Item O first and then item K.
Okay. And anything else the committee is interested in hearing tonight?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor, aye. Anybody opposed? That motion passes. So given that, and actually, oh, I must have the wrong agenda. Because I know we have a presentation here. Here we go. I'm going to go to my printed version. All right, we do have one presentation tonight. We have our Assistant Finance Department Director, Alexis Lotero, here to talk about the City of Santa Fe gross receipts tax historical information. And I believe there's a couple of charts in your packets that we're going to go over. And Director, I will turn it over to you. Make sure you're talking into the mic. You have to really,
Better?
yeah, there you
There
go.
we go.
There you are.
Okay, I'll try to stay in this spot. So the first chart is comparing the city of Santa Fe to Las Cruces and to Rio Rancho. Those are kind of comparable cities, but the two key things to remember when you're looking at this is they do have a lower GRT rate. But the difference between what our receipts look like and what their receipts look like is significant. If you look on the chart, we bring in for 24, our final number was 166.7. And for Las Cruces, it was 130.3. You know, we're talking about $35 million. And Rio Rancho was right around 80 million. So that's very significant. I mean, you can see from this chart that the city of Santa Fe has a very healthy revenue source in GRT. Chart. This chart, I know it's really hard to see on the screen, but I thought, you know, the first thing that's really interesting about this chart is you can really see when the internet sales tax took effect. So it took effect for fiscal year 22. So the jump from fiscal year 21 to 22 was 30 some odd million dollars. That was the biggest jump we've seen in the past several years. So beyond that, the years hover around an increase of $10 million. And you can see that, you know, one of the things I try to explain to people when they're asking me about the unanticipated GRT, where the unanticipated GRT comes from is the difference between what we budget, and you can see that on this chart, and what we actually take in. And what we say when what we take in, that's unanticipated, and we'll spend it for one-time sources. Because by the time we actually have that number, we've already built a budget for the next fiscal year with a higher level of revenues. So we've already built that into the current year budget. The other thing I think that's important to point out at this time is the stock market today was down 900 points. It was down significantly last week. So, you know, we've been aware that we think our GRT is leveling off, but economic conditions aren't great at the moment, I would say. So I think that for next year, what we're projecting to build into our FY26 budget is about 166 million. And I will stand questions. I can talk about anything on the chart you'd like to talk about, but those were kind of the highlights I wanted to draw attention to.
Great. And I think this is very interesting to see how, since I guess it would be FY21 moving to our current FY25, just how this revenue source has continued to recover from the pandemic, the heart of the pandemic. And it is our, can you speak to how important this revenue source is to the budget?
Well, this is the main source of revenue for the general fund. So this is really what funds most of the city activities, is the general fund. There are increments of it that go to different other areas, but the bulk of it gets deposited into the general fund and budgets most of city's operational expenses.
Okay. And just a couple other points before I go to the committee is just, we have seen the unanticipated revenue pot in the last couple of years. Do you anticipate that continuing?
Well, Madam Chair, I'd like to stress that this year we've budgeted 159 million in GRT, and what we took in last year was 166, almost 167 million. So there may be a little bit of unanticipated GRT, but I'm really concerned that it's not going to be at the $20 million level where we've seen it in the past few years.
Okay. And of course,
So
yeah, nobody has a crystal ball, but I think you're seeing, I think both the market and kind of the leveling off probably suggests that we shouldn't count on a big balance in that area.
correct, Madam Chair. And it's important to note that I haven't sent out the memo for December yet, but we do have the December numbers. And those came in at 54% of what we think our revenues should be for this year. But you have to bear in mind when you're looking at that number, those are generally high months. Those are the late summer months and the Christmas holidays. As we get into January, February, March, those are lower months. In addition to the fact that the ski season, you know, we got a little snow over the weekend, but we haven't had a great snowfall since October.
Okay. And then just, I think the committee is aware of this, but the public may not be. So you have the December memo to get to us on what the actuals were. But generally speaking, that information is about a 2-month lag coming from the state. Can you speak to that, about how we don't know until 2 months after the fact, kind of where the GRT numbers came in?
Correct. What we just, the numbers we have the memo prepared for are for December of 2024. Because we got them in early March-ish. The date, I think, well, it's not really early, it's about mid. But we're always operating at that lag. But more importantly is that those are the high months. And 54% is really tracking at being flat.
Right, but I guess the point I want to make is the fact that we don't have, so the reason why we don't have March's numbers or February's numbers is that there's a lag of, the information doesn't come from the state to us in real time.
Correct. There's a 2-month lag. And that's also, a TRD collects the GRT, they have to account for it, it has to be allocated out. There's a lot of work to be done on their end, and that's why there is a 2-month lag.
Yeah, okay. I just want everybody to know it's not that it's sitting on your desk and it's waiting to come here. It's the fact that you don't get those numbers. You don't even have March's numbers. Well, March we're still in the middle of, but you don't even have February's numbers yet because they haven't come from the state.
Correct.
Okay, I just want, in case people aren't aware, how long it takes for us to get current GRT numbers. We're usually 2 months behind, wherever it is, whatever point in time we are at. So, okay. Yeah, I might have some other points I want to make, but I think those were the big ones. Questions from the committee on this? Counselor Cassett.
So much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Alexis, for being here. I am curious about how we get our gross receipts tax rate, because you said that we do have some percentages that, if I understand correctly, we have, or previous governing bodies are opted in to increase by a certain percentage for our GRT that goes to a specific issue. I think that there might be a few of those, but can you speak to what those are? And is that the only reason why our GRT is higher than Las Cruces and Rio Rancho?
Madam Chair, Counselor Cassett, this is really, the increments are pulled out when we have the aggregate number come in, correct? And those were previous councils that decided, we're going to put an increment in affordable housing. We're going to be an increment into transit. There's 3 or 4 where we put money specifically for those projects, but it's not a huge amount. It really is just a small increment that goes into those areas. And it really doesn't impact our what we're receiving in aggregate. I'd say the biggest contributor for Santa Fe is tourism. We're a tourist destination in the winter, generally with the ski season, and we're a tourist destination in the summer for all the different things we have going, our lovely hiking trails, climate, activities, you name it.
That's the reason why our GRT's revenues are higher than Las Cruces and Rio Rancho is because of the tourist economy.
I think that chart does a really good.
Yeah, more so than the,
And the rate, than the difference in rate. So it just has to do with the fact that we
Right.
just get more people spending
Correct.
more money here.
Yes.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, Dr. Riley White, is he in the audience?
Sorry.
No,
I'm a poor substitute.
you're just fine. My,
I put her up to this, and she said, but Dr. White, and I said, no, you come.
you got it. You got it, Alexis. So I don't know, I may speak to a little bit to maybe the question that Councilwoman Cassett had. And I don't know what, I just pulled up the New Mexico gross receipts tax schedule, and it's always in here. I'm always messing with this stuff in my own business because we have to know how to properly charge according to any sales when they come in that are taxed. And for an example, in the city of Santa Fe, we have a 8.88 something tax rate, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, just what I know. And so that's what we would charge. Let's say even any business in the city would charge that gross receipt sales tax. There's about 6.5% on average that's brought in by the county. So the county rate is 6 point some cents, and then our city rate is the difference. And so that's the difference in money that we pull in. So I don't know what the Las Cruces or, what is it, the county in Las Cruces, it's Doña Ana County, their rate, and then you have the city's rate, and that's that percentage. And so, obviously our tourism is going to probably bring in, that's where that's our industry. And so, you stating that, we have, certain months that are better, and typically you see the tourism coming in during the summer months towards the end, and then it's kind of ski season when we have a good ski season. So I think my question initially was, in your opinion, what does cause for the increase in GRT, which is tourism? How do you think that the stock market feeds into that?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, tourism is all about discretionary income, right? So if people are feeling uncomfortable about going on vacations or purchasing luxury items or things that, oh, well, I'm not worried about having a job in 6 months, right? And right now, I think that there's so much uncertainty around the federal situation with layoffs and some of the things that are going on there. And we do have Los Alamos, we have another lab, it will impact us on some level locally, but nationwide, we still have, we want to attract people, but if they're not gainfully employed, then they're not going to come here, obviously. But even people who are, if they're losing money on their portfolios, they suddenly don't feel that comfortable. Oh, I'm going to, buy a second home in Santa Fe and live there 3 months out of the year. That's not as likely to happen.
Yeah, and I think I just kind of wanted to pick your brain on that because, GRT is 100% on spending. People have the money to spend, whether it's on basic goods, bread, milk, eggs, you can't find them anywhere, or you have to pay a super amount of money. But
One of
No.
the numbers I've been paying attention to since there was all the concern around recession was, consumer confidence, right? How do people feel about these purchases? Because I think Santa Fe is very dependent on those people having a positive outlook.
right, so probably commodities will probably more than likely stay stable or increase because people will spend more on what they need rather than what they desire. So, thank you for the synopsis. I think that, it is important that we truly do understand, how do we make money as a city? Well, it's taxes. And so, I tend to see when taxes are introduced or there are new taxes, how do we sustain that? And how do people participate in paying those, so that we can have municipal services, county services, state services, federal services, and everybody, plays their part in contributing, from small businesses all the way to individuals just spending their own money. And those that work for government, that we spend the money back into our communities. And I think that's all really important to understand. So those were just my one question and comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Just two other things. So gross receipts tax is our biggest revenue source, general fund source for funding the bulk of the things we do as a city. We don't have a diverse portfolio of growing and different revenue sources. And I think that's important to point out. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, Madam Chair, gross receipts is really the driver behind the general fund. We do have, utilities as an enterprise and they're self-supporting. But a lot of the other areas, particularly recreation, we don't collect enough to support the services we provide as a city. It is subsidized by the general fund. So although there are other funding sources, and I would also say that the GRT, although we have, high points and low points, it overall, it's a very, it's been very good for the city of Santa Fe as a revenue source. Property tax is far more stable and consistent. But, you know, I would just point to our GRT in the past 5 years has almost doubled. That's a big jump because of the internet sales tax.
Right. And, but it is a fluctuating revenue source, as we saw with COVID, when it completely took a nosedive, and that was a really scary time. So there is that. And we are very dependent on people spending money here and paying that tax. Just one other point I want to make to the committee. So all the increments are in ordinance, and there aren't a whole bunch of them. And I would just, and I think if Andy were here, our budget guy, Director Oster, you're waving at me. I'm going to turn it to you because I think you're going to make my point for me.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have a little chart that I can put up on the screen that shows the breakdown of that 8.1875%.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Excellent. And before I do that, I just want to, I put the information that Assistant Director Latero was presenting from back up on the screen so you can see that huge jump in the GRT revenue between FY21 and FY22, where we saw the full effect of the internet sales tax going into effect. So that is really where the big increase is, like Assistant Director Latero mentioned.
Yeah, and if we could, can we move that captioning just over a little bit so we can see the numbers that are it's blocking? Thank you.
All right.
I learned that it moves around, which is very handy. Well, you don't have to put it up. I want people to be able to see it, maybe down lower. Can it go lower right or yeah, lower left? Well, there we go. There we go. Now we can see the numbers and the captioning. People who need the captioning, I want to make sure they can see it. Okay, you're going to show us a different.
Yeah, so for FY21, you can see the total GRT was 112.8 million, and for FY22 it went up to 145.7, 145.6. So, and that is when the
Internet.
the full implementation of the tax on remote sales went into effect was in July of 2021. Okay, so in regards to what is our gross receipts tax rate comprised of, this is an older slide from a presentation that we had here in finance back in November. I just wanted to put it up on the screen. So these FY24 numbers on the right in green were unaudited and they're from November. So I would say, you know, disregard those, but this does show the breakdown of the rate and how you get to that 8.1875%.
Is there any way to make the chart bigger
Sure.
than because I can't
Yeah.
see that.
Bigger here.
And since it's not in our packets, but we've seen this before.
Yeah, we can put it in the packet too. How's that as far as size? Keep making it bigger.
Well, you know, maybe you should just send that out to everybody, because I think
Sure.
in the context of what we're talking about, it would be helpful.
Sure.
But for people who are watching, I think that's also helpful just to see it up there on the screen. I guess the point I was going to make is that, you know, these increments are nice to have, but it's also, I think and Andy would say this if he were here, that we have to be very careful with setting aside portions of GRT for specific purposes. And really what we want to do, because this GRT is such an important revenue source for the city, for the general fund, we want to keep that pot of money flexible so that the governing body presently and in the future can continue to prioritize spending based on the community's needs. If we have it all tied up in increments, you really limit the ability of the city to move the money around as it's needed, as things change and problems come and go. So I just want to make that point as well, that it's not really something I'm anxious to see us do more of. And we have them, some, as you said, a small portion that is used for specific things, but it's really something to be discouraged overall. because it ties our hands. Okay, I don't want to belabor this. I did think it was interesting. I'm trying to bring you substantive information ahead of the budget hearings that help set some context. We'll, of course, during the budget hearings, have some more context setting, table setting around the budget, but just wanted to make it worth your trip down to City Hall today. So, all right, with that, we will move on. Thank you, Director Lotero, for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo the thanks to Alexis Lotero for joining us and for that helpful presentation.
Okay, now we're going to go into our consent agenda, and we did change the order of the items pulled. So we're going to go to item O first, LMNO, there it is. This is a request for approval of amendment number 1 to General Services Contract Item 23-0350 with Pallet PBC to provide shelter units and facilities with safe outdoor space in the total amount of $1,466,100 to adjust for price increases with no change in total compensation and extended term to June 30th, 2026. We have a whole team of folks. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, but these are our pallet people. And I believe Councilor Lindell, you pulled this item, am I right? And there might have been others. So there may be a number of questions, but perhaps you all can introduce yourselves, and then maybe, is it okay if they just give you a little context, or you want to jump right into questions, Counselor? All right, I'll turn it over to you, Director Hammond Paul.
Thank you, Counselor. Great to be here again. Henry Hammond Paul, Director of Community Health and Safety.
Hi, good evening, counselors. Julie Sanchez, Youth and Family Services Division Director.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Woods. I'm a program manager in the Youth and Family Services Division.
All right, well, thank you for having us here. Happy to answer any specific questions that you all have about this item. And I'm very thankful to have the whole team up here to support me. We roll deep to these kind of meetings, so thanks.
Okay, sounds like they're ready for you, Counselor.
Just a couple of quick questions. When we recently passed purchasing more pallets, part of that is perhaps my very own misunderstanding, but I spoke in favor of that for a number of different reasons. One of them, however, was that we had a price that was good through, what was the date?
Madam Chair, Counselor, thank you very much for the question. So to be clear, we actually, and maybe this is where I should have given some level set at the beginning. So we were able to use that bar to purchase the requested units locked in at the old price. So those units we currently have a PO for at the old price. This is Pallet, the company that we are purchasing from, has upped their prices, and we are just amending this contract in the event that the city decides to, throughout the course of the duration of the contract, ever purchase more from them. So the units that you approved the money for were indeed purchased at the older price.
Okay. So is it the same company?
Madam Chair, Councilors, yes, it is the same company.
Okay, so when I look at the new price as compared to the old price, the new price is cheaper.
I'm
Am I somehow in the weeds somewhere?
What page are you on, Counselor?
Just 1 second.
I just want to make sure we're all looking at the same thing.
Loads a little bit slow. Okay. Scratch that, go to a new question. On the new price, we have a difference, we have a different, square footage of building, correct?
Madam Chair, councilors, yeah, that is correct. I believe the new units, the new price is a 70 square foot unit. The old unit was, I think, 62 or 64 square
60.
feet.
60. Things like the, electrical hookup, those kinds of things, there's like a 300% difference in cost on that. We know why?
So, Madam Chair, councilors, the reason that Pallet has done a price increase is it accounts for design changes, new materials that have a higher insulation value, some interior furniture changes, as well as more durable hardwares and things like the HVAC components. I want to maybe contextualize that with saying that we're in no way obligated to purchase these new units. This is just in the event that the city wants to, we like what we did with the first 10, we like what we've done with the subsequent 90. If we want to purchase more, this allows us to do that in case we want to scale this program again. And the reason we asked for this amendment is so it keeps the contract valid, because otherwise I think we'd have to go out to bid for another vendor if we don't accept these price changes as part of the contract.
If I can, Counselor, I would assume also it keeps the price here too, correct? And with things going on in the world, that price is likely to keep climbing.
At this new price, that's correct. It keeps us locked in at this price. I believe, I don't have off the top of my head the duration that this price will be locked in for this contract, but I believe it's in there through June 2026. A year and a half, give or take.
These took a very, very significant price increase from 10,000 to 16,000, right? Have we made any consideration, or have we looked at, other purveyors of this type of, shelter?
So I'm going to hand this off to Director Sanchez in a second. I will say that I know that there was a considerable amount of work that went in for this initial bid and to arrive at this current vendor. But I will say, just in the broader context, these are only filling a very kind of specific gap in our broader strategy. So we are very open to the best possible product, but we're not putting all of our eggs in this basket of the temporary shelters. We need to invest in permanent supportive housing, affordable housing. So that's the broader context, but I'll let Director Sanchez.
So Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, we did go out to an ITB back in I want to say it was the beginning of 2023. We had 4 respondents to that ITB, and Pallet was by far the lowest cost.
That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I did want to pull this. I saw that it was pulled, so, and the exact questions that Councilor Lindell had, thank you for the responses. In regards to this, this item, we will not purchase the pallets because I would have the same question. Why not purchase them when we need them? When would we be attaining more pallet homes in the case that we do need them? Because obviously we've had this question, this debate over we have so many in storage, they're not being used, they're just sitting there. And I hate to utilize funds or spend on something that's just gonna sit in a warehouse somewhere. And so when would that be activated in terms of purchasing more?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, thanks for the question. So this by no means requires, this doesn't require us to purchase any. It is in the event that we are moving forward with, as this coming Wednesday, my team and I are going to be presenting to the governing body about the plan for deploying those additional units, and then our engagement process that we're putting forward. This is hypothetically in the next year or 18 months from now until June 30th, 2026. If we deploy all the units that we currently have and the city as a whole decides that this is working great and we want to do even more, this would just allow us to do that without having to go out to bid. It just keeps this contract valid, so that in the event we decide that 100 units is great and we want to do another 30, we could do that without having considerable kind of process delays to issue a new bid.
And I'll just go back to the previous presentation that we just got. Obviously, GRT, money that we receive, potentially being flat, potentially in the future going down. And so again, I think it's very important that you know, we take a look at these items, and I don't want to be in a position where now we have to go back and say, man, we spent this money and we can't do anything with it. We have I'll go back to my car analogy. We have the car, but we don't have any money to put gas in it. So we can't go anywhere. And so I just, again, want to reiterate the fact that we don't have a specific need for them immediately. Let's just be cautious about spending. And then in the case that we do, obviously, it sounds like this is something that you know, if done right, can work for our communities. But at the same time, we want to do it right and not have it fail. That's my biggest concern. With that, no further questions, Madam Chair.
Other questions from the committee? So I just want to put a cap on this. So basically, we're locking in a new price, higher than the old price. But we knew that was going to happen, which is why we did the bar, approved the bar that we did last month, whenever we did that, was to buy the, what was it, 60 more at the old price, because we knew they were going to go up. So what we're doing here is we're locking in the price increase for until June of 2026, so for another 18 months, and extending this contract, our ability to buy these for that same period of time. But that we're not, what's in front of us today is not to buy any. It's just to keep this open. Should we need more, we'll lock in at this price. And I can imagine, again, given the world where it is right now, these pallet shelters are going to do nothing but increase in price in the next 18 months. And so this is actually really, I think, important work that you all are doing to extend this contract and to lock in this price in this kind of volatile market that we're in. Am I understanding this?
Madam Chair, you are 100% correct.
Okay, anything else from the committee? If not, is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. I believe we need a roll call, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councillor Cassett,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell, Councillor Faulkner,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Mayor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you, pallet people, for being here. Okay, you don't like pallet people? It's true. Okay, anyway, we're just entertaining ourselves here. Anyway, thank you for being here. We are going to go to item K. Request for approval of amendment number 1 to professional services nope. Yeah, that's right. Professional services contract item 21-0522 with Financial Consulting Solutions Group, Inc. to remove the fiscal year cap for amounts payable to contractor for utility rate and financial services. We do have Director Dozier here. Director Roach had an appointment, and he is going to, is doing his best to get here. Thank you, Director Dozier, for being here. I do think, though, we can handle this item, and I just want to catch the committee up. At the Public Works and Public Utilities Committee meeting last week, this item was discussed, and there, I don't know how familiar, I assume the committee is fairly familiar, and Director Oster, you can probably fill in whatever I don't quite get right, but essentially this is a 4-year contract capped at about $600,000, and over the 4 years there have been the ability of staff to pull down on this contract roughly $150,000 a year in each of the last 3 years, and we're in the 4th year of this contract. The first several years, the amount that could have been used was not completely spent. And now, in the 4th year, there is a need, because of the work that's going on, and we'll speak to this a little bit, to take the cap off of the contract where each year you could only spend a certain amount, roughly 150,000, so that the amount that hasn't been spent under the total 4-year cap can be used for some really important work that's needed before the contract expires. And I can, let's see, hold on. I want to just read from an email that Director Roach sent in case he was not able to be here. And this is from our consultant who works under this contract. And he, in an email, speaks about what his consulting group does for Santa Fe on a regular and annual basis. And these are some of the things we talked about last week. One, they do an update of the long-range forecasts. So they prepare comprehensive long-range 5- and 10-year forecasts for water, wastewater, and environmental services every year and present the findings to staff and, if appropriate, to the council. That work typically begins after the city's period 13 closure, but before the audit, and it generally starts in August and is completed in April or May. They do a short presentation demonstrating the impact of the findings. They also do a cost of service update. Each year, they update one of the 3 utilities' costs of service studies. So again, wastewater, water, and environmental services are the 3 utilities that they are helping with. Last year, this year's update, FY 2024-2025, was the water utility. Last year was wastewater, and the year before that was ESD. And the year before that was water again. The cost of service study determines the cost of serving each individual class of services, residential, commercial, et cetera, and compares that cost with the revenue earned from the approved rates. Other services, they sometimes perform additional services that are not exactly in the same scope as the 2 above items, working with credit rating agencies to update your bond ratings, evaluating NMED loan documents for the wastewater plant, and preparing alternate financial scenarios on an as-needed basis, evaluating the county's wheeling agreement and wholesale agreement, redesigning the rate structures, et cetera. And they try to accomplish almost all of these within the scope of work and budget. But for the FY 24-25, they had to request additional funds due to the effort and the need. And I think this might be an appropriate place, Director Oster, for you to speak directly to some of these other services that are needed this year. And I think that the Finance Committee, as well as the governing body, are familiar with some of the things you're going to speak about. But I guess before I turn the mic over to you, there's roughly 200,000 left on this roughly $600,000 four-year contract. And I think the consultant did get back to Director Roach to say that they, in fact, will need the bulk of that money. There was some conversation at Public Works, Public Utilities that maybe only about 50,000 of that 200,000 would be necessary. But in fact, the consultant has reported that they will need to spend pretty much the rest of what's available in the contract. And I think, Director Oster, you can speak to some of the additional things we did not talk about at Public Works, Public Utilities that would account for the dollars that are needed now. And so I'll give you that opportunity to describe in more detail how this contract is needed and why these funds are necessary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. From my perspective in the Finance Department, FCS is a very important partner when we work with utilities to evaluate new financing. In this case, we have several different types of new financing that are in progress right now. In Director Roach's email, he mentioned the Environment Department Clean Water State Revolving Loan Funds that will provide up to $151 million of financing at the interest rate of 0.01%, which is incredible. That's an amazing opportunity. The work that Jason Mumm and the team at FCS do is very important to ensuring that we evaluate potential financing opportunities such as the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund and ensure that we have revenues in the future to repay debts that we may borrow today. So there's the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund financing. We have a new award through the Water Trust Board that's administered by the New Mexico Finance Authority. That is $17 million. Half of that is a grant. The other half is a loan that has to be repaid, again, at a very low interest rate, 0.25%. So also, exceptionally favorable terms for that financing. And the city, finance department works with the Public Utilities Department in conjunction with FCS Group to ensure that rates and revenues are projected to cover the costs of that financing. In the case of those two new financings that we're embarking on right now, the interest rates are so exceptionally low that we're really focused on ensuring that we can repay the principal of those loans, because the interest is quite small, but the principal payments do become fairly substantial, especially for the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. Another area that we've worked very closely with, which Director Roach mentioned in his message, was with FCS Group, was on the rating process for the outstanding debt. We do have outstanding bonds for the wastewater system and for the water system. And when we go through the rating review process, we work very closely with FCS Group. We did that back in the fall with Fitch, but in the spring is when we've traditionally done our rating review with S&P. And George Williford, who is our municipal bond advisor, has let me know that we should be expecting to hear from S&P this spring wanting to do a rating review. So Jason and the team at FCS are instrumental in helping us respond to the questions that the rating agencies ask and defend the rating as part of the review process. So those are just two areas that I've personally worked with FCS Group in regards to utilities. And I will just say that their input and their services that they provide are really integral from my perspective in us making sound decisions about these financings that we're embarking on.
So just a couple things. So those three things are things that are we're going to continue to need to their consulting on with this money.
Madam Chair, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And then we talked, and I think everybody on this committee may be familiar with the fact that we are also looking at rate increases in the wastewater and in the water utility to cover both operational costs increases and carrying out our 5-year capital plans, and just looking at where we are and how we're, I think if Director Roachwood here was here, he would say we are seeing, and I forget the term that they use, but they're seeing pressure on that rate structure. And that is an indication that we need to evaluate whether that rate structure is still serving us appropriately and what kinds of changes we need to make in order to keep all 3 of these utilities solvent. And we did have a increase in trash pickup, but we do anticipate that the wastewater treatment plant is going to need a rate increase. The wastewater rates will need an increase, and the water division will need a rate increase. And I think there was something else I was going to say about that. These are both of these, and I think in more detailed presentations about both these rate increases, once we've done the work with the consultant, we will be able to also speak about the fact that we have not increased rates in either of these utilities in a very long time. And so we're sort of behind, and the need for that work is really critical. So I just wanted to kind of give some background, Councilor Lindell. I think you pulled this item as well. I pulled it because I wanted to make sure that the committee had all this information, that we continued the conversation that had started at Public Works and Public Utilities. I'm sorry, Director Roach couldn't be here tonight. But I think, between his email and Director Oster, your familiarity with the work that this consultant does and will be doing under what remains of this contract, I hope that that's informative for the committee. Councilor Lindell, I'll turn it over to you.
Just what I needed to hear on, so I wanted everybody to have clarity on it.
Okay. Other questions from the committee? Councilor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Director Dozier, Director Oster, I'm not sure if either of you know this, but I did see that so this contract expires June 30th, 2025. I imagine that we're going to be looking to renew this contract. I mean, this sounds like work that's not going to be done anytime soon. So I just, after hearing about all of the important work that's going on here, and then seeing the contract expire, can you give a little bit more information on the long-term plan here?
Sure, absolutely, Madam Chair and Councilor Cassett. I did ask that question when I reviewed this contract because of the reasons you mentioned. This is an important service that FCS is providing. Because this is a professional service, we can only extend the contract for up to 4 years. So the utilities group is working on preparing a new RFP to go back out for procurement for these services.
Okay, so we do have to go back out to RFP. Okay, thank you. And then I think this is maybe just a general practice, and maybe I've missed this in other contracts, but I don't recall usually seeing an annual cap in all of our contracts. So can you discuss a little bit why that was put in place here, if that's common?
Madam Chair and councilors, I can't speak to why it was done in this specific case. I can tell you that in some circumstances, it makes sense to put language about an annual cap into a contract. And in other situations, it leads to amendments like this to make adjustments. So, this contract was put in place before I joined the city, but I would say in general, we're moving away from that more specific by fiscal year language on multi-year contracts, because we've found that we're having to bring forward amendments like this. So one thing that's really important here is we're not requesting an increase to the total amount of the contract. We're just requesting to spend more in the 4th year to essentially, as Counselor Chair Romero Worth said, take some of the amounts that were unspent from previous years and utilize them in the current year when we have these additional services that we need related to projects like the new financing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was something that seemed really interesting. And also, again, as we talk about with all of our contracts, that our contracts are, always these up to amounts that even when we approve the contract, it does not necessarily mean that those dollars are allocated. So we do also have to then allocate said dollars to expend on the contract. So that does make more sense to me, not putting these interesting arbitrary dates, especially when we're looking at these projects that are going to be ongoing and are not necessarily on a fiscal or calendar year project. So thank you for explaining that to me. I was curious. That's all, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and I guess I would just underscore that is also the importance of this contract and us utilizing, the fact that it is expiring the end of June, the fact that we do have this critical work that we need help with is why we need to get this particular item passed this week so that this consultant can help us with this work in the time remaining with the amount of money that's remaining under this contract. So just want to underscore the importance of being able to draw down on this money to do this important work with this consultant while we still have them and before we have to go back out to RFP. So just want to emphasize that. Other questions from the committee? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. If we could get a roll call, please.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia, Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Director Dosher, for being here. Okay, we don't have items on the discussion. Matters from staff.
None at this time, Madam Chair.
Matters from the committee. Counselor Cassett.
I'm just curious about when we might expect budget hearing schedules. My mother's asking about Passover, so I need to get budget hearing into my calendar.
I can't give you the dates yet, but I want you to know I have been bugging Director Oster for that very thing. And I hope, and it's a good thing we have the city manager here in the chamber to hear that we would like a definitive schedule as soon as possible. So, okay. Director Oster, did you have anything you wanted to add? I don't want to put you on the spot. I think, we're working on that and I am advocating for you all that we need those dates.
Madam Chair, can I respond during this section of the agenda?
That's a good question. Probably not. All right, matters from the committee. Counselor Faulkner.
Yeah, and we've been talking about what I'm about to ask for a while. It would be really helpful if this committee could see the actual budgets from the departments leading up to the budget hearings, because what I saw last year is not something I would call a budget, and I'm not sure I feel comfortable voting on something that's only 5 items, including other expenses and expenses to other departments. And so I don't know how we're supposed to do our job if we don't get enough information to really know that we're like honestly taking a look at the budget in a comprehensive way.
Okay, thank you. Any other matters from the committee? Matters from the chair. I don't have any other than we will have those budget dates to you and as soon as possible, as well as the process nailed down. And our next meeting is Monday, March 24th. Thank you all. And with that, we are adjourned.